There wasn't a shopping cart in Michigan that didn't like that car, and it had just beat to death. Watching YouTube and watching all these different channels, you always see like the one kid that found his dad's Mustang that his dad had to sell to raise a family or open a business, or even Papa John went looking for his Camaro at one time. And the kids always try to chase down their family's cars, their parents' cars, or their dad's hot rod. But my parents are not the most mechanically inclined people. Like, when it's broke, it's got duct tape over it, or it's just broke. Like, that's it. I mean, that's the way it's going to be. It's broke. And that's the way my parents are, and no one has any idea how I turned into this guy. Maybe because I'm adopted, but whatever's clever. So my mother-in-law allowed me to marry her only daughter, and I have outkicked my coverage. I say that all the time, but sometimes, it's the truth is stranger than fiction. So I am way out of my league with this beautiful girl from Shelbyville, Indiana, and her mom is just awesome. And of course, Haley has this passion for these Australian cars like I do, these big V8 cars. And whenever we have the big cookout and all these cars in our backyard, there's one bizarre color that they made in 2008, and it is called Stealth Blue. And there is not much blue about it. It is blurple. It is like a blue purple. Any way you look at it, it's purple. It looks like Barney the dinosaur, like it is a purple car. And my buddy Luke Studebaker has one. And my mother-in-law would come to our cookout every year, and she would walk past all of the horsepower in my backyard and the cars with the superchargers and the turbos and everything else, and she would just want to know where the blurple car is. And these things are a bit rare, and the build numbers for them, for a 2008 Pontiac G8 that is stealth blue, the build numbers are a little off what they actually exist, because they say there's over 500 of them. And you always have these little groups where it's like the Subaru Owners Club or the Typhoon Club or whatever else. There is a stealth blue community on Facebook, and there is a whopping 7 members in that thing because they don't exist. They're not out there. In Valdosta every year they have the G8 Extravaganza, which becomes a Holden Extravaganza because the SS and the GTO and the Caprice are now all invited too. But there has never been one of these stealth blue cars there until Luke finally drove his car down there after 10 years. So anybody that says there's more than 30 of them out there, line them up, have them give me a call. There's no way. So I never wanted a Pontiac G8 ever again after I had graduated to the Chevy SS, the Holden Commodore, even the newer Caprices. The G8s almost seem, Flintstone-ish, just back in the Stone Age, because there's no creature comforts, no Bluetooth, no anything. They're just a little archaic, for lack of a better term. The only thing I ever did is I told my buddy Luke, I said, if you find another one of these G8s, blurple, stealth blue, give me a call. And that was the biggest mistake I've made in a long time, on top of all the multiple other ones that I've already done. He called me and he said, hey, I think there's one at a Volkswagen dealership in Daphne, Alabama, and it is just sitting out back with cobwebs on it. So I said, is it a V8? And he said, yeah. And I said, how do you know? And VIN numbers and all this stuff. And I called my buddy Shane Ferguson that lives down near Gulf Shores. And I said, how far is the ride for you up there to check this car out? And it's a Sunday. I don't want to talk to any, salesman or anything else. Give me a heads up. He said, I'll ride up there. He jumped on his motorcycle and he said, how bad do you want this car? And I said, I don't know. Why? He said, so he sent me a dozen pictures. And just like if you have a friend or anybody says, hey, can you go look at this car for me? It was bad, but it was real. It was a stealth blue G8 GT, low mileage, but somebody never kept it inside. And of course, you always try to find the previous owners. And she lived in an apartment complex down the dirt road, and she only drove it to the Winn-Dixie or something. Like, it was just ridiculous, full of the red Alabama dirt and everything. Just stuff we don't have in Indiana. And so I called the dealership, and we did a wholesale deal through Switch Cars out of Ohio that purchased this car for me, and then brought it back to Indianapolis on a transport. And we had to beat a hurricane home, but we got it. And I spent the next 12 months, year and some change restoring this car. And my mother-in-law caught wind that I had bought one of the Blurple cars. And even though it was in complete disrepair and it was sitting in the shop and faded bad and the headliner falling down, she would always just walk out there just to see this car. The same way she did at our cookout whenever Luke would come. And she would always just be obsessed. She had an Equinox that was kind of purple. And I don't know, it was just the color. It didn't matter what it was was just this color. I put it in the body shop, and it spent some time there. And during that, one of the whopping 7 members of the Stealth Blue Club on Facebook put her car up for sale. But it was a V6, and I am not that guy. I'm like, wow, of all the things. Slick top, no sunroof, V6. They may have had a little bit different styling choices than I have. Had a big wing on coilovers, sitting on lowered wheels, and it was not the best example of that vehicle, but it was the right color. And going back to being that kid that always wanted to chase down their parents' car and give it back to him. If I gave my father back the car that he had in high school, he'd be like, okay. I mean, he's just not that guy. But if I could find a Blurple car for my mother-in-law, Sally, man, I mean, here we go, right? I'm moving up the ladder, at least in the will, I would hope. So I called Katie Beal up in Michigan. I said, hey, let me buy your car. Took my neighbor again, Rick Burkert, next door. He's a guy that never says no. He always ends up on road trips with me in the weirdest spots, and maybe had visited his first dispensary while we were up there. But needless to say, we went up there and bought her car. And I towed it home, and my wife and I secretly started restoring it for her mom for Mother's Day. We have this grand plan that we're going to give Sally the car that she's always wanted for Mother's Day. And my mother-in-law is cool, man. She is raised 2 kids on her own. Haley's father, Don, passed away when she was 11. I always am the guy that sends like Sally Happy Father's Day on Father's Day because she had both roles. I mean, she did it all. Nurse, lots of success, just good job. But it was not easy doing it. So I called my incredible brother-in-law and I said, hey, we need to do a brake job on this and update the brakes and the suspension on this because they had the lowering springs and all this. Not exactly my taste of customization on that car. So we started putting it back stock. We had it done just in time, but we had shipped the GT V8 one that I had and restored off to my good friend Adam Valentine in Ohio. And Adam did a DOD delete, which is a distribution on demand delete on my G8 in like 6 days. Well, in less than that. He did it in 3 days and 1 day to pick up, 1 day to tow. So, but anyhow, a job that should have taken a lot longer. He turned it around because he knew I had a deadline and I had to have that car in time so that I could play a trick on my mother-in-law and pull up in mine and then have another one pull up and give it to her for Mother's Day. So Adam, the night before in midnight, I was in Columbus, Ohio, picking up my GT one, drug it back home. We're cleaning the other one up. We sent the Blurple V6 off to Walter's Body Shop. They painted the hood and the bumper cover, and we took the goofy wing off and put a stock wing and painted the trunk lid and got it looking slick. Did $500 in paintless dent removal because there wasn't a shopping cart in Michigan that didn't like that car. And it had just beat to death, but it ran, it drove, it had cold air. It was a good car. Like it turned out nice. And Sally is usually one of those people that's like, all right, like whatever. But we didn't know what her reaction was going to be when we gave her a car. Well, she's going to be like, no way, like Publishers Clearinghouse kind of thing, like balloons and confetti and all this stuff. On Mother's Day, my wife took off in the GT and I followed her there in the V6 and I hid around the corner and she pulled up and pulled in the driveway. And my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were there, and these people all helped on this whole gag. And of course, you always want to have that reaction where, because my parents are not the people that had a car, but you always want that YouTube video or whatever where somebody finds his dad's truck or somebody. I'm going to finally live that moment and be like, all right, we're going to give something somebody and it's a gift and whatever else. And we're buried pretty deep in a Blurple V6, but whatever, it's my mother-in-law. So she pulls up. Mother-in-law comes out and says, oh, you guys did a great job on the V8 car. And she knew that we were restoring this car. And then she starts walking back in the house And Haley's like, you better get here. Like, come on here. She's going to walk into the house. So I come around the corner and I pull up and Sally's in the door and she goes, oh, he got one too? Because Haley pulled up in the V8 and then I pull up in the V6 one. And my wife has her phone. She goes, no, you got one. And we expect, no, like the publisher clearinghouse, like, woo! And she starts crying. And then she has to go back to the house and compose herself. And to watch my mother-in-law cry, that's tough because she's such a cool person. And then she came out and we gave it to her. And it was incredible. She just couldn't believe it that we would take the time to do something so thoughtful for her. But I was finally able to live that dream of handing something to somebody. And they were so overcome with emotion that, oh my God, you did this for me. Because she didn't care about the V8, didn't care about the V6, didn't care if she cared about the color. And that was the car of her dreams. Even though she could have done it for herself, we were the ones that gave it to her. So Haley and her mom go out for a drive on Mother's Day. And they went out and did 60 miles an hour, and it's all on videotape. And Haley's mom's been driving an SUV, and now she has her own car. And so Haley's mom, Sally, has this like 2018 Equinox that she parks in the driveway. And the 2008 G8 V6 now parks in the garage. So I was finally able to live it, and she's incredible, and she deserved it. So.
We'd like to thank Patrick Adair Designs for their support of the VINwiki channel this month. Patrick and his team create some of the most amazing rings you've ever seen out of the most interesting materials on Earth, and I guess from space at times, because they do also use meteorites and superconductors and all this crazy stuff, interesting metals, even at times parts from broken exotic cars. This one was made out of some carbon fiber and some aluminum from the barrel of a broken LP640 wheel off a car I used to own. This year we're going to do some more exotic car part collaborations with different ring ideas, so be sure to stay tuned for that. You've also seen Patrick sitting right here in this chair telling some of his best car stories, and he'll be back to tell some more. Patrick has also documented his journey of entrepreneurism and some of their ring projects on his own YouTube channel, as well as some of his amazing car projects. So check them out and visit them at the link in the description below. Use the code VINwiki20 for a 20% discount, and thank them for their support of VINwiki.